All right, ladies and gentlemen, we have a quorum. All right, I'm going to be skipping around on the calendar. We've got some folks that have to be elsewhere. So let's see. Senator Hickman, we'll call you up first. You got here, and you got a simple bill. So.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's an honor to be here, and I really appreciate the opportunity. Our bill is Senate Bill 66. It allows for another judge to be in the Atlanta Judicial Circuit, go from 4 judges to 5 judges. In the most recent meeting of the Judicial Council of Georgia, they identified the Atlanta Judicial Circuit as one of 3 circuits that needed an additional Superior Court judge. Just to tell you which counties those are, I'm sure you know this, is Bryan, Evan, Liberty, Long, McIntosh, and Tattnall. And of course, Tattnall is the county that houses Georgia State Prison, Rogers State Prison, and Smith State Prison. And so, as we well know, with the large inmate population in Tattnall County, there's more habeas corpus cases are filed in the Atlanta Judicial Circuit than any other circuit in the state of Georgia. This fact alone places a significant burden on the 4 judges currently serving in the circuit. I won't go any further other than say that at this point in time there has not been an additional judge in this circuit in 28 years. And this is in the governor's bill and will be funded effective January 1, 2024. So I appreciate your consideration and support of it.
All right. Any questions from the committee? Go ahead.
Motion to pass.
Second. All right. Motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Bill's gone.
Good. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes,
Thank y'all
sir.
for your time. Appreciate it.
All right. Floor. You want to come do yours, Senator Hatchett? Floor Leader Hatchett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. This is a bill I'm bringing on behalf of Governor Kemp and his office. What this bill is very simple. Back when Sonny Perdue was governor, through executive order, he created the Office of the Inspector General. What this is doing is just codifying that office in the Georgia Code, so it exists outside of just the executive order.
What's the bill number?
Excuse me, Senate Bill 59.
And this is the bill that came through this committee last year. Is that right?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Pretty much the same wording.
To my knowledge, it is, I believe, exactly the same.
Okay.
Anybody signed up?
We have one to speak on the bill.
Okay.
All right. Any questions by the committee? All right. Seeing none, I'll call up Thomas Weaver. Please have a seat and tell us who you are. And
Representative Guntler, members of this House Judiciary Committee. I'm a private citizen. I don't represent anyone or anything here. I come down here on my own time. I'm on dime. I've done it for many years. I'm in full support of what Senator Hatchett's trying to accomplish, and I'm going to testify to this committee the same thing and sentiment that I shared with the Senate Judiciary Committee when this measure was on the other side. Basically, this is a good bill. This is fantastic, and I fully support the General Assembly's efforts to codify this in the statute. I just have a few little requests to ask this committee to consider if it should be the will of the committee. This bill seeks to codify the authority of the Inspector General to hire peace officers to enforce criminal laws in some respects. I'm not taking a position on how many people that office may or may not want to hire or how much of a budget the General Assembly should or should not allocate to that office. But if it should meet with this committee's approval, if you should choose to allow it, Mr. Chairman, may I please direct the committee's attention to line number 65 and 66, please? And is the committee working off of LC 442202 EC?
yes.
Okay. On lines 65 and 66 of this measure, it says investigate acts that may constitute violations of that provision of law. I would respectfully request if the committee should deem it appropriate, since this measure seeks to allow this office to hire and employ post-certified peace officers, to strike the provisions of Article 1 and 2 of Chapter 10 of, and just leave Title 16 intact. such that it would read investigate acts that may constitute violations of Title 16. And that way it would give those peace officers the authority to enforce all manner of criminal law for any type of investigation that rightfully becomes before that office on a matter of fraud or waste or abuse throughout the entirety of the criminal code, not just cabining their authority to just those couple of articles under that one chapter. And then the second measure that I'm going to raise that was mentioned by Senator Sutzler, who was a former House member for many years over in Senate Judiciary Committee, is on lines 174 of the bill on the very back, seeing as to how this office is seeking the authority to hire peace officers. This measure grants those peace officers on line 174 the authority to carry firearms, but it only exempts them from 2 code sections. I would gambit and posit to say that it says notwithstanding code section 16-11-126 and 16-11-129. I would ask the committee to consider deleting the word and inserting in lieu thereof the word through, so that they would be exempt to the same extent as any other peace officer would be. Because if you're going to have an office that's going to employ those peace officers, and again, I ask this of the Senate Judiciary Committee, they should have the authority to investigate crimes the same as any other peace officer would, and they should have the authority to carry a firearm as any other peace officer would. And if the committee would be receptive to that, I would be immeasurably thankful if that should be the will of the committee. Although I cannot speak for the author or the House sponsor of the measure, because I did not speak with the House sponsor of the measure concerning this ask of the committee prior to the meeting today. And I can explain why I'm asking for that if any member wants to ask any questions.
Any questions by the committee? All right, seeing none. Thank you, sir. All right, any discussion on the bill? You got any response that you want to make?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I want to thank Mr. Weaver for bringing that. Since his testimony in the Senate Judiciary Committee, I have spoken with the governor's office. I have spoken with the Inspector General, who's actually present here today, and they've requested that we keep the bill as is for now.
Okay. All right, what's the pleasure of the committee? I got a motion to do pass and a second. Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, your bill passes.
Thank you very much.
All right. Senate Bill 148. The author is, I think, tied up right now. As I understand it, this bill's this is a state bar bill? Okay. It's, I hate to call it a cleanup bill, but it modernizes it. So we have a speaker. Robin Miller, if you would come up and tell us what you know about the bill. Okay. Just pull those microphones down.
Yeah. And I'm Rusty Sewell. I represent the State Bar. And Robin Miller is one of the authors of this long, short that Rock couldn't turn. But it's the work of 4 years of a committee of the State Bar getting together to try to bring our not-for-profit code up to kind of the modern thing of our corporate code, because since they have to go side by side. The bill is rather long, but not from when the Legislative Counsel's office looked at it when they were redoing it. They wanted to go ahead and redo some other code revision kind of stuff. And so it's not all what we wrote, but unfortunately, a lot of it is, Robin. So I'll let her explain a few things, and y'all have got stuff in your file that goes through everything too.
All right, thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Robin Miller. I've been practicing in the area of nonprofit law for over 30 years. I was the chair of the nonprofit law section in 2019. I've been practicing as long as this bill has not been revised substantially, which is quite some time. But in 2019, the section decided that it was time to do a good look at the code because it hadn't been revised, and decided that we should do a line-by-line review. I was able to put together the most amazing, what I would call a dream team of lawyers from Georgia in the area of nonprofit law. The legislative committee that we put together that started working and worked all through COVID, we had over 80 meetings between subcommittees and committee meetings to get this done. Included people from the Attorney General's office, the Secretary of State's office, Children's Healthcare of Atlanta, Habitat for Humanity, Emory University. We had 2 seasoned trust and estates attorneys. We had some seasoned litigators to make sure we were addressing any litigation issues as well. We also had an attorney who'd been practicing in the area and represented every kind of nonprofit imaginable in Georgia over the last 40 years, and a law professor as well as myself. And I work for Pro Bono Partnership of Atlanta. If any of you are familiar with our organization, we represent very small nonprofits. So we had the whole gamut of nonprofits addressed by our committee. We also reached out to the Homeowners Association lawyers to make sure that nothing that we were doing would interfere with their activities as well. So we really tried to be very considerate of all the aspects of nonprofits. I don't know if y'all are aware, but there's over 32,500 nonprofits in the state of Georgia, and they represent a total annual revenue in Georgia of $77.5 billion. Yeah, it's kind of amazing. And they employ almost 500,000 people. So it's a rather large sector of our state. And so we really felt like it was time to do some things, including simplify the code, modernize the code, and bring it in line with the Georgia Business Code, because the Nonprofit Corporation Code is designed in light of the Business Code and is really intended to be very similar to that code. You all received a one-pager, I believe, that Rusty put together that also identifies some of the large and variety of nonprofits in the state who are supporters of this bill, in case you're interested in that. So as I said, the code is based on the Georgia Business Code. It makes sense because a lot of nonprofits a lot of attorneys that advise nonprofits in the state are business and corporate lawyers. It also allows for greater standardization by the Secretary of State's office and the Attorney General's office by having the laws very similar. The Business Code is updated on a regular basis. As I said, the Nonprofit Corporation Code has not been. In fact, the last major change was about 5 or 6 years ago and was introduced by Senator Kennedy, who is unable to be with us today. So our goal was to bring it in line, modernize it, simplify it, and make it more efficient for the Secretary of State's office and Attorney General's office. As you know, it's very long. We have categorized the changes into 3 different buckets, and I believe you have about a 5-page document that captures that. A good number of the changes are what I would call cleanup, bucket number 1, which is typographical changes, grammatical changes. A good number of those came from Legislative Council. We had initially started with just making those changes that were a little more substantive than just typos, and cleanup of that nature. But it makes it more readable and understandable, and they are good changes. The second category includes modernization to the law, clarifying the current law, and conforming to the business code. One really good example of clarifying the law was the merger section was redundant, and it was 3 times as long as it needed to be. So we just rewrote it with the same exact result, but made it much more easily readable and understandable, and more in line with the business code. The third category consists of approximately 32 changes to the law and its operations. I am happy to go through as many of those as you would like, or simply answer questions from you regarding any of these changes. But before I finish, I do want to point out the modernization aspects in that second bucket, which is the business code has made modernization changes along the way. We really have not. And in the last few years, we've seen how important remote communications really are for operations of corporations. And so we tried to bring the nonprofit corporation code in line with the changes the business code had already made. But we also defined the word document, electronic, and electronic transmission to comport with new technologies and also future technologies. Believe it or not, in the nonprofit code today, the word telex is still in there. Yeah, exactly. It's time to get us into the 21st century, right? So we address those sorts of issues as well. Like I said, I have a few changes that I'd be happy to present to you, but I know you all are very busy, have a lot on your plate. So I will leave it to you to guide me as to if you have questions or if there's areas you'd like to hear more from me about. Thank you.
Any questions by the committee? Representative Holcomb.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your hard work, and mostly just a comment. I used to work with both Kitty Cohen and Nick Jurek, so you definitely had some all-stars on your team, as well as Cass is universally known for his expertise. So thank you for your hard work.
Thank you.
Anybody else? All right, is that the only speaker we have? I think so. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, what's the pleasure of hang on. Representative Evans.
I just have a comment. I'm shocked that Tom Ritchie did not sign up to speak. So I was waiting to share some words. I was just going to make sure that the committee was aware that Tom Ritchie was my first partner that I worked for, my first legal mentor, and taught me everything I know. So to the extent y'all think I'm a good or a bad lawyer, you have him to either thank or blame. So. But thank you, Tom, and knowing that he was on this committee makes me feel confident that this bill has certainly been thoroughly vetted.
All right, thank you for that. All right, thank y'all.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. What's the will of the committee? A motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right.
Thank you.
Passes on. Thank you. All right. Got him? All right, we're going to take up Senate Bill 64 at this time. Did y'all get to talk to Kirkpatrick? Okay, she's aware. All right. Senator, how are you, sir?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. I'm sorry it took me a minute to get in. There's a big crowd out there. I didn't know if y'all were selling tickets to Taylor Swift concerts or not. So,
Whenever you're ready, just let us know.
yes, sir. I am ready, Mr. Chair. I will be presenting off what I'm looking at is LC 339460 S as in Sierra, and in brackets SCS. This is Senate Bill 64, and I know we say this ad nauseum in this building, but this is a very straightforward and simple piece of legislation. And I think the legislation everybody has in front of them is very self-explanatory. And just briefly, I'll say the driver behind this legislation is the fact that something that I hold near and dear to my heart. And on March 28th of this year, my mother would have been 81 years old. But she's not here, so the Sunday prior to that, my sisters and I will get together. There's 3 of us, and we'll have a celebration of family out in the field. And we'll look at each other and we'll recognize each other's eye colors, and we'll recognize the gait and the little mannerisms that we have from our parents. And we'll laugh and talk to each other, and we know those things that make each one of us closer. And we say those things, and we are brothers and sisters. We know who we are. And there's a segment of our population that wants to feel the same way. And that's adults who were adopted as children. And they go through their life, many of them in loving families, loving homes, but there's always that curiosity in the back of their mind to know more about who they are. And what this bill does is this bill gives them the same footing that my sisters and I have. It lets them know who they are. And look, everywhere else in society we can find out. We can have somebody mail us a tube in the mail. We can put saliva in it, send it back, and they'll tell us things about ourselves that we knew already and things that we just couldn't believe. And so all we're doing is saying that when a child is adopted and when they become 18, that they can do what Randy Robertson and everybody else in Georgia can do. They can go to the Vital Records office and they can get a copy of their original birth certificate. And what they do with that birth certificate is entirely up to them. But I honestly believe that they have the right to do that. And for the individuals that reached out to me about this legislation, they truly brought me what I believe to be one of the most compassionate pieces of legislation that is entered in this House during this session. And I would appreciate the support of the committee, and I'm willing to answer any questions. I know there are many witnesses here who live in this arena and have strong opinions and work really hard toward taking care of those children and adults who live in the state of Georgia and around this country today who were blessed enough to be adopted. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, any questions from the committee? Representative Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and to my Senate Majority Whip, my friends.
Yes,
I know you certainly have a heart for adoption, and I feel like I've seen this bill before. But I guess is the reason today that we have the petition, is there some concern with the original birth parents and whether they wanted it to be a sealed adoption or not? Is that kind of been the concern originally? I'm just trying to figure out why we have the process we have in place today.
I don't really know. I know the process changed years ago. I think, to be completely honest, and you know, my good friend as an attorney, you see this more than a lot of people do. Here in Georgia, we do a lot of things in a very archaic manner. A lot of times this information was being withheld from these individuals because of what many misguided and maybe well-intended individuals viewed as shame. Mm-hmm. Because there's a bit of, people look at people who are adopted in a different way. And so I think in maybe trying to protect individuals, what we've really done is we've hurt more than we've helped. And so I think what this does is this legislation pushes us forward into 2023 where we should be. And but I think the old practice was under the wrong impression that children put up for adoption, maybe back in the days when the mothers, when they became pregnant, they were sent off somewhere, and then the child was relocated into an orphanage or somewhere else and adopted out. And in order to protect the birth family, and maybe in some disjointed way to protect the child, but I don't think that's the case anymore. We have a lot of adoptees out there that are extremely interested in determining who they are, where they came from, and what their identity is.
And when I understand that, I just want to, and I can't ever imagine thinking this way, if I had a child, would be to, they make the tough decision to let the child be adopted, but then decide, I don't want the child to even know who I am. But some people think that way, and so I'm just trying to make sure we're not creating a scenario where the original birth parents who wanted their privacy. It's a delicate balance here. You have the child that was born and the parents who had the child, and that's just my own, that's just what I'm going back and forth in my head right here, and that's why is that why we have the current process in place, because of the parents' right to privacy?
I do believe that was the intention, along with what I think is the way society looked at primarily ladies who had babies and gave them up. But the thing in this bill that I think we have to understand is that the baby's born and it's 2 weeks old. It's given up for adoption. Mm-hmm. What we're giving that child the right to do is 18 years later to go and be able to get the birth certificate. It's nothing that within where the adoptive parents can go and grab it and or anything like that. And a lot changes in 18 years. And so I think what we're doing is, even though we are very sensitive to the needs of the mother there at the beginning, I think at some point we have to shift and be concerned about the productivity and well-being and mental health of that 18-year-old adult who grew up in a world as an adopted child, not really knowing who they were, to put it simply.
And that was just, I didn't want us to do anything that may discourage the birth parents from entering into the adoption process. And I know you wouldn't ever do anything like that either. And that was just, thank you for indulging me in my questions.
That was
Thank
great
you.
questions. Thank you, sir.
Is it Omari? Is it Representative Crawford?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Senator, for this bill. I do have one question. If I'm looking at lines 21 through 24 on page 2, under this section, it says that any parent, sibling, or decedent of a person that's we're trying to occupy or get the birth certificate, they will have the right to receive a copy of that birth certificate. I guess my thought is that would be for any assets that's passing down, but I'm also concerned or curious about maybe some unintended consequences. So I kind of have a two-part question. The first is that if you have multiple children or decedents in this case, does this give them an exclusive right to a copy of that birth certificate?
Are you talking about as the adopted child or as the individuals that you're identifying on line 21?
I'm actually looking at line 23 specifically
23?
for that question.
Okay. Okay, so I think if we back up to, and I know you see this, if we back up to A, where it says this code section is deceased.
Yes.
So correct. So that would be the case, and I do have a witness that may be able to answer that question a little better.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, let me help with some clarification on that. So those lines reflect who can receive the birth certificate of the adoptee once they are deceased.
Correct.
Only deceased. So while alive, it would only be the adopted person themselves. And this also mirrors the language of anyone else who is not adopted who is allowed to receive their birth certificate. So their immediate family members, their attorneys, their descendants are also allowed to do that for any non-adopted person. So this is just the same language, except it only even comes into play when we're deceased.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Introduce yourself so that the
Yes,
people
thank you.
watching this will know who you are.
Yes, thank you, Chairman Gunter. I am Jamie Weiss with the Georgia Alliance for Adoptee Rights.
Okay. All right. And
All right.
Jamie is very intimately involved in this, and she understands this from a platform that I do not, and I don't think many people do, and so I appreciate her support on this.
all right. Do you wish to have her testify?
I
now?
would,
If-
Mr. Chairman, if that's okay.
all right. If you would.
Yes, so I was adopted here in Georgia, and upon my birth, I was relinquished, and at 6 months old, when my adoption was finalized, my birth certificate became sealed. So up until that time, it was still available. The fact is still in the law that if I were a foster child and never adopted, or if I were, cared for by a family member and not adopted, I would still have access to my original birth certificate. It's still in the DFACS child welfare policy that states foster children have a right to their original birth certificate when they turn 18. And so it is only adopted people that do not have this right, one group of people. And so this bill would simply give us the same right as all other people in Georgia. I would like to clarify too on Representative Kelly's question is that historically births were a publicly recorded event. And so the sealing of those happened because we didn't want that not we, but people thought that information should not be available to the public to keep from the stigma of being adopted or illegitimate. from being placed upon a person. And so this is very outdated because birth certificates are no longer publicly available. And so it would only be available to the adopted person, like we were talking about with Representative Crawford. So that is something important to understand why that happened. And so it's just a very outdated law. And so currently we can obtain our birth certificate as an adopted person. We're just required to pay thousands of dollars to an attorney and to go to the court to petition them to receive it. And we just really want to remove that discriminatory barrier and those expenses and be able to simply have the same right as every other Georgia-born citizen. So I just ask that you guys support this bill and do pass.
All right. Any questions of Ms. Weiss? All right, thank you. We have Gary Koch, I think. Wave, okay. Rosemary Lee? Wave, all right. Teresa Robertson?
I'll wave.
Wave, all right.
Thank you.
Lila Bradley?
I will also wave.
You gonna wave? All right. We're moving right along.
That's everybody.
That's it? Okay. All right. Anything further, Senator?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I just know that throughout this process, there's a lot of pit fighting and a lot of tough decisions made over legislation. And I think rarely do we get the opportunity to do something absolutely right. And, you know, I would really, I in no way take any credit for this. It's the people that came with this concern, whose emotions I could never connect with because I was blessed enough to have a great mom who took care of my sisters and I in a very good way. And so I hope this is one of those pieces of legislation that we can get through here and correct something and make a segment of our population whole.
All right. Thank you for bringing this. What's the pleasure of the committee?
Move to pass.
Second.
All right. Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right. Your bill passes on.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir. All right. Senate Bill 19. Where's the, yeah. Thank you. All right, and, okay, we got Dana down. All right. Senator Kirkpatrick, if you would, tell us about your bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm working from LC 442354S. Is that what y'all have?
That's what we have.
Okay, great. First, I'll just start by saying that the only law school that I've been to is the Judiciary Committee in the Senate for 2 years. So if there are legal questions that come up, I may not be as in the weeds as you want me to be. This bill addresses passport fees retained as personal income by Superior Court clerks and probate judges. About 78 clerks of court and 8 probate judges are currently processing U.S. passport applications, in addition to post offices, libraries, and some other facilities. In about 50 counties, clerks or probate judges keep the fees as personal income over and above their salaries and benefits. There's a processing fee of $35 that goes directly to the clerk or probate, and this is handled different ways in different counties by these elected constitutional officers. Some split the fees between the county and the clerk or probate's office in different ways, including one of my counties, Cherokee County, which splits the money between the county and the clerk's office. Others allow the fees to go directly to a clerk or probate's bank account. And although this has apparently been in place for a number of years, I first learned about it last fall due to media coverage in one of my counties, Cobb, where the clerk had taken home about $425,000 over a 2-year period, in addition to her $170,000 annual salary. These large numbers have also been happening in a number of other counties with high volumes of passports, and of course the pandemic shut down passports for a long time, and then when things started to open back up, there's been a spike in people trying to renew their passports and start traveling again. Apparently, there have been previous attempts to change this formula dating back to 2012, before my time, that did not make it through the House. Passport processing takes place on county property using county taxpayer resources and staff. And in my former county, the Fulton County Commission recently in February passed a resolution condemning the retention of passport fees as personal compensation, and I provided that to the chair. I don't know if you have it in your folders. Many members of the public have contacted me about this bill, and to be honest, a lot of people just didn't know this was going on, as I didn't know either. This bill requires disclosure of the fees. Section 1 calls for the fees to be shared between the county and the clerk's office with a 50-50 split that can be changed either by a local bill or a written agreement with the county. The bill also authorizes that the first $10,000 can be kept by the clerk as a salary supplement with disclosure. Section 2 does the same thing, but for the probate judges. The effective date is January 1st, 2024. This sub exactly lines up sections 1 and 2 and allows the supplement to be adjusted in addition to the split between the county and the clerk or probate's office with either a local bill or written agreement between the county's governing authority and the clerk of court. This bill has been through some changes as it's gone through the process, as you can imagine. It started with no allowance for personal income, and then the Senate amended the bill to increase the original amount approved by the committee, which was $7,500, which was added in response to feedback from clerks in the smaller counties. That amount was raised to $20,000 on the floor with an amendment for the clerks, but not the probate judges, and this substitute evens that up and allows the first $10,000 for both with disclosure. I don't know what the right number is, but the key to me is transparency and acknowledgement that in most cases this process is using county resources, personnel, and supplies. This bill gives flexibility to adjust the amount based on a local bill or a written agreement between the county and the clerk or judge. I've been here since 2017, and had I known this was happening, I would have brought this bill a lot sooner. And it was just recently with the media coverage that I became aware of it, and that's why you're seeing it now. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
All right. Representative Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator, thank you for being with us today. Just a couple questions. Are clerks or probate judges constitutionally required to do this today?
No, sir.
So is this an additional service they're providing to constituents across our state? Do you have any concerns that if and I'm for transparency, but do you have any concerns that by placing some of these dollar amounts in here that we may disincentivize them from providing this service?
I think the numbers that are in the current sub are actually quite generous and should cover the concerns of most of the smaller counties that are doing this type of voluntary activity. So actually, no, I don't have concerns about that.
But do you think that there are clerks across the state that will quit, or probate judges that will quit providing this service if this bill passes, making it harder for Georgians to get passports?
I don't know the answer to that, but I've been working with ACCG on this bill. They may have a comment on that. But at this point, I think it's a fair bill. It gives a lot of flexibility for the counties to adjust the amount if they want to. All they have to do is
I've never seen a county give up money voluntarily. They're usually here talking about local control, and we're taking some away from our clerks here. But
certainly, and the legislators certainly can do that with a local bill as well.
Right. I know one of the biggest, and I'll just be clear. My clerk doesn't do this in either of the counties I represent. But one of the things, and I think as a result of that, I have constituents call me all the time who are having trouble getting their passports issued. And I think one reason for that is they get stuck either going through the center in Atlanta or the post office or a library and relying solely on the federal government to take care of them. And so my concern is that by taking away one local option that they have, we're going to make it harder for Georgians who like to go for tourist activities to get their passport, or we're going to make it harder for immigrants who've chosen to live in our state to go home and visit their families. And so that's kind of where I'm concerned, is that we're going to end up taking away an option to do that. And maybe I'll ask the counties if they're going to provide it if a clerk stops. But I think if I put an amendment to that on the bill, they'd call it a local mandate. And so I'm just trying to make sure we continue to have a local option. So thank you.
All right, Representative Holcomb. Evans, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Senator, for bringing the bill. As you know, and some on the committee know, I have a client who worked in the clerk's office in Cobb County regarding the situation that you're referring to. So I know a little bit more about this than I did this time last year. And to Representative Kelly's question, is there any what's the magic of the clerk's office doing this, as opposed, like, could other officers that exist in the county decide to do this and then work under the same sort of framework that we're setting up here in SB 19?
I think that is possible, although there's federal dispensation on this, and I'd have to pull out the paperwork on that.
Okay. I was just curious. And then you shared a little bit, but could you, I just want to make sure the committee understands and heard the amount of, or any of these handouts that we have, do they show the amount of additional compensation above the base salary? Because while I'm sensitive to Representative Kelly's concern, I'm not sure that we need to incentivize quite the way that the law incentivizes right now.
I did have some other numbers. I didn't get into it because I'm most familiar with the situation in my county, but Fulton County obviously had a concern, and there's been quite a bit of coverage of that situation as well, with the clerk pocketing $362,635 in passport fees over and above the $180,000 salary. I've got similar numbers in DeKalb, $209,860, and that was in 2021. And then Gwinnett just began processing passports in March of 2022, and from March through December, Gwinnett County, the clerk there made $96,695.05 in personal income.
And thank you. And then one last question, if I could, Mr. Chairman. I'm not that old. I shouldn't have forgotten what I was going to say. I'll remember.
Happens to me all the time.
And I'll ask I'm sure there are other speakers that will come that will be knowledgeable, and I will ask them. But I was wondering, in all your work on this and going through it in the Senate process, what is your understanding of the amount of county personnel being used to do this passport processing work, as opposed to the elected clerk, him or herself, processing personally?
I think that varies greatly by county. In some of the larger counties, obviously, this couldn't be done by one person because of the volume. Some of the smaller counties, I think there are some where the clerk actually does the work, him or herself. And so I think there's a lot of variability around the state just based on the location.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Crawford.
Yes, thank you, Senator. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, as well. As I'm looking at this bill, one of the concerns that I have, and this goes with Representative Kelly's question, and that is, I guess the question is, some of the bigger counties like the Fulton, the Gwinnett's, and the DeKalb's, are you aware of how many passports that they process? My concern is that this bill is going to try to treat every county the same.
It actually treats every county the same to some extent, in that the framework is set up for, not based on population or anything like that, but it does give flexibility to adjust the ratio of how the money is split up between the county and the clerk's office, and also to adjust the amount that can be taken as personal income. And that can, as I mentioned, either be done by local legislation or by an agreement with the county. So that hopefully takes into effect the differences in different counties.
May I ask a follow-up?
You may.
Thank you. Do you know the numbers of passports that the big three, like the DeKalb, the Fulton, the Gwinnett? I don't have that information, how many they process yearly. If you put it in our folder,
It's actually just math, which is not my strong point, but the fee is $35. So if you take those salary numbers and divide it by 35, that would be your number.
Okay.
Representative Reeves.
And Mr. Chairman, I may have a series of questions, but I'll try to be brief. Senator Kirkpatrick, you represented Fulton County for a long time, and the tax commissioner in Fulton County, that's kind of the most egregious situation of a public officer getting a lot of extra money, right? Representative Scoggins has House Bill 290 relating to tax commissioners, and that's over in the Senate right now, but he's working on that for tax commissioners to try to keep the Fulton County problem of spreading around the state, and applaud him for those efforts. That's something that we passed out of this committee, and we want to crack down on other people repeating the problem in Fulton County, and I applaud you for responding to this Cobb County problem. That Cobb County clerk had legal problems aside from merely collecting the money, right?
I think the legal issue, and Representative Evans knows a lot more about this than I do, but the legal issue was related to the expedited shipping fees, for one thing, which are actually, it's not legal to keep those, my understanding. And then the other thing was some document destruction, perhaps, but again, I haven't gotten into the weeds of that case. That's not really what I'm working on right now. I just learned about the personal income piece of this in the process of the media coverage of that situation.
Sure.
And in full disclosure, that apparently personal income part was happening in Cobb County prior to the current court clerk.
Right.
But I wasn't aware of it.
All right. And apparently neither were officials in Cobb County, and that's why the clerk ordered records to be destroyed when it began investigating. So that clerk in Cobb was doing things below the radar, and it was not forthcoming. But is it your understanding that other clerks around the state have been forthcoming, and that the counties are okay with the way that clerks are processing passports in various counties, small and large?
I think it's different in essentially every county. The
Okay.
ones that are doing this service, which is whatever number I said, 78 counties.
And so this bill was kind of separate, and you didn't know about the tax commissioner bill Representative Scoggins had that has a similar goal but doesn't have the caps and things like that.
I was not aware of the
Different-
tax
different
commissioner
tracks.
bill. I knew there was a situation, but I was focused on the passport fee issue, which was unrelated to the tax commissioner issue, and so I kept this bill narrow to the offices that do handle passports.
Okay. And Mike Bowers was Attorney General for a long time and had a lot of Attorney General opinions. And he had an attorney, or when he was Attorney General, there was an Attorney General opinion on this subject, right?
I believe there was. I don't
Okay.
have it in
And
front of me.
that's in favor of the clerks. That says it's legal, it's okay.
I certainly have nothing against any clerk, and I've tried to accommodate their requests all along. And I personally think this strikes a balance between adding transparency to the process across the state and also allowing some income to be retained as personal, which should alleviate the concerns of those clerks who do use their own personal time and money to do this process.
Okay. And I heard about it, and I checked online, and I see the 20,000 and 7,500 online. We've got the 10,000, and that was the original version. It's now 20,000 and 7,500, right?
The version you have now is 10,000 for the clerks and 10,000 for the probate
Okay.
judges.
I was trying to make sure
There-
that I've got the right
original
numbers.
number was 0,
Okay.
and then that went to 7,500, and then half of the bill went to 20,000, but not the other half of the bill, and so 10,000 was just an effort to be fair and consistent throughout the bill. But as I said, it's the will of the committee, what you all want to do with that number. And
Okay.
I'm trying to be fair and add disclosure to the process.
And so there's nothing magic about the 10,000, but Representative Scoggins' bill relating to tax commissioners, it requires an agreement to be reached, but it doesn't have a number. It lets the locals sort that out. Would that be acceptable to you, to leave it to the locals? They're required to reach an agreement, but let them negotiate and sort that out at the local level. You can't unilaterally, privately, without disclosure, collect the fee. You got to have an agreement, but we're not going to decide here at the Capitol what that number is. Let them sort that out in Americus or Albany or Lawrenceville. That's the tax commissioner model that we're trying to get passed.
I mean, that's a big change from the formula that we've been working on for the last several months, but I wouldn't rule it out. I just
Okay.
haven't looked at that particular formula.
Is that in Title 15?
It is.
Okay. Got all sorts of bright ideas here, but I've asked enough questions, so I'm going to leave it to other members.
Well, Senator, the tax commissioner bill, it is, as Representative Reeves says, that it's over in the Senate now. We're waiting for a hearing, so we think we'll get one here in the next day or two. But it does require a three-party agreement between the municipality, the tax commissioner, and the county governing authority, which would be the commissioner's office, to agree on a set amount for the tax commissioner to receive for collecting taxes for the municipalities. He may be collecting, or she may be collecting from multiple municipalities. And the way they do that is they charge per parcel that they collect that tax bill. Each parcel has a tax bill, and they get paid per parcel. And the cap on that tax commissioner's bill is 50%, no more than 50% of the annual base salary of that tax commissioner. That is the max that that tax commissioner can receive for collecting taxes on municipalities.
What I would say about that is that this is somewhat different because the municipalities are not involved with this process at
I
all.
agree.
It's just the counties and the clerks or the probate judges. So it's a different.
Yeah, but I would like to see an agreement between the clerk and the county on the amount, as Representative Reeves was talking about.
I think that's in the bill.
Okay.
If you look, I mean, that number is just a
Okay,
starting
line
point,
57,
and it
okay.
does get flexibility with a written agreement between the county and the clerk or the probate's office to change that number. And then what I heard about that is it isn't always that easy to get to an agreement between the county and the clerk or probate's office, but
Every constitutional officer has add-ons to their salary. As a probate judge, I got X amount of dollars for serving as traffic court judge. I got X amount of dollars for being a custodian of vital records. So everybody has add-ons to their salary. That's a constitutional officer. The clerks also have add-ons that they can get for serving as clerks for other courts, like juvenile courts, state courts, magistrate courts. They can get add-ons for those types of things too. So the thing I see here is we've got to, and I understand it's done on county time with county equipment, with county money, and county employees do the service, whether it's birth certificates or whether it's passports. And I agree that they should be compensated for that extra duty they get above and beyond what's constitutionally required of them to do. I agree they should get paid. The thing I think we got to reach is that dollar amount of what we need to pay them for doing that. And I don't know that 10,000 is enough, because that's a big responsibility. I know the probate judges get $7,500 for being custodian of vital records. These duties that you have on or above your regular job, you could go in tomorrow and say, I quit. I don't want to do passports anymore, or I don't want to do vital records anymore. If you didn't do the passports, they would go to the post office or some other federal entity that did them. If you did, if a probate judge said he wanted to get through with vital records, that would go to the county, to the health department for them to do it. So there's a lot of things that can play in a part of this, and I think the thing we got to get to is the amount of compensation for that clerk that does that or that probate judge that does that. And my clerk in my county, who happens to be my sister-in-law, but she
Oh,
doesn't get
great.
she doesn't get paid. She doesn't get paid for that. She don't do passports. So I'm walking a fine line here. I don't want to make all of her friends mad, but I'm walking a fine line here with that. And but we got to get to that amount, and I agree they should be compensated for what they do. It's on and above their constitutional duties.
I would just point you to, on page 4, where it talks about the first $10,000, that's paid in monthly installments, but if the amount of fees collected in a calendar year is less than the supplement amount, then the county doesn't pay that. So it's actually more of a cap rather than a flat fee.
It's anything below that the clerk would get to keep. Is that what you're saying?
No, that's not what I'm saying.
Okay.
Actually, what I'm
Okay.
saying is 10,000 in the current bill, and that number is the will of the committee, would be the maximum that could be kept as personal income. And below that, it's based on the actual amount of passports that were processed.
Right.
And if
Yeah,
it
that's
doesn't
what
hit that cap, then that money goes back to the county.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Representative Evans.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think the fairness factor is vital, and I like this discussion. I like the idea of counties getting, because it's a service to the people, and if the clerk doesn't do it and the county still wants the people to have a service, then they'd have to maybe somehow pick it up. It's a little bit different because it's federal. I get it, but all that to say, I also though think that it would be wise to have an amount in there in the event there was not an agreement, because sometimes not everybody gets along and there can't be an agreement. And so my question for you, and then maybe for the committee to think about on our own, is was there any consideration of this minimum amount or the base amount, the 10,000 amount, being on a population scale, just like the base salary is, to make up for the fact that in the larger counties they are going to be processing more, and so shouldn't their base, so to speak, be higher? I just wanted to know if there was any consideration or discussion of that in the Senate.
There was not, but again, the amendment that passed for the court clerks on whenever it was for $20,000, and it just didn't make it into Section 2 of the bill, and so I wouldn't argue if the committee wanted to make that $20,000.
Representative Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm trying to make sure I didn't get confused by the response to Representative Scoggins' question. We were talking about lines 55 through 59. And you said that we can change the percentages. The county and the clerk, or the county and the probate judge, can change the percentages based on an agreement with themselves or through a local act of the General Assembly. That's the percentages, but not the supplement, correct?
Actually, it does apply to the supplement as well, and that's on line of the section you're referring to, line 36 through 38. That supplement can be adjusted based on a local bill or a written agreement.
Okay. All right, thank you. No more questions, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Any other questions for the author? All right, thank you. I got several people who want to come talk. ACCG, Todd Edwards.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Again, I'm Todd Edwards with the Association of County Commissioners of Georgia. I believe Senator Kirkpatrick did an excellent job explaining the contents of the bill, and y'all had some great questions. I'll follow up. I'll make a brief statement. First of all, yes, this is a legal process. Federal law authorizes in Georgia probate judges and Superior Court clerks. We mentioned other offices, libraries, post offices, to issue or process, execute applications for U.S. passports. So it is legal for them to do it. And it is also legal in Georgia state law for the clerks or the probate judges to keep however much of this compensation or the fee revenue as personal compensation. There's no question about that. The question is, and this bill is in front of you, is it right, do you believe, to keep for the clerk, the probate, in this case, in this bill, to keep all of it as personal compensation when often using county time, county staff, and county resources? If you think that's perfectly fine, normal, this bill isn't for you. The next question, if you question that, is, well, should the legislature enact some sort of fix or some sort of mechanism whereby that is not all kept as personal compensation? There we have the bill in front of you, and then in looking and what the questions are about is what is a fair and equitable or reasonable way to come about addressing this. And your questions were excellent, and I'll actually go through them if I may. Starting, if you don't mind, Mr. Chairman, in the interest of time.
Sure.
Representative Kelly, I think I answered that. It is an additional service. This is not required of clerks or probates. They do it as a public service. It is a valued public service. We appreciate them doing it. The next question is, if the General Assembly halted all fees as personal compensation with no regulations, would some probates or clerks quit doing this or offering this as a service? I would certainly hope not. They would obviously have to answer this question. If they chose not to, it would be a disservice. So that's why the question is, what's reasonable, what's the additional compensation, et cetera. Perhaps that would, as being a public elected servant, perhaps there would be someone running for office running next that would say, well, we'll provide the service if we're elected, but we might charge a lesser amount. So that might play itself out in the political process as well. It was asked if county commissioners or Georgia counties would like this mandated upon them. Again, it's not mandated. But if it was mandated on us under these circumstances, I bet there would be quite a few county commissioners in the state that would like to make $200,000 or else above using county resources to offer this public service. If it was optional under the same rules, I would hope that the same rules would apply to either office. Other questions were, I believe, asked is the $10,000. There might have been some confusion, at least how I interpret it. The $10,000 up front, and I haven't seen the sub, but I know the gist of it, would be a maximum amount, but would automatically go to the clerk or probate. So if your county raises $11,000, or the fees processed amount to $11,000 a year, for example, the first $10,000 would automatically go to a supplement. Whatever's left would be $1,000 in this case. Under this scenario, 50% would go to the county governing authority and 50% to the clerk or probate's office to use as non-salary or non-compensation, but for other. So yes, it would all go to them, monthly installments, just like the constitutional officers' pay is currently being done. I've lost my train on that one for a moment, but I did mention the 50-50. Is that amount right? 10,000. Larger counties, smaller counties, they may disagree. I believe that's why Senator Kirkpatrick has in there the provision that, A, the county and the clerk or probate judge can come across or provide whatever salary supplement they agree to. So if they're not agreeing to the 10,000, set it at whatever they want in agreement. And if you don't trust the counties to do it, then you can also do that by local act. So there's no exact formula on what is right. The county commissioners, county governing authority, also elected by the public, they likely also see this as a public service. They would work with that office, increase the supplement, increase the 50-50 split, which also applies, can be changed. So remember the supplement first, and then second, the remaining 50-50 split, that can also be changed by either an agreement between the office and the county governing authority or local act. So both of those have that flexibility in there to make it fit to each county, or if the county doesn't act right, to fit you as legislators, members of the General Assembly. Some other questions that were asked, and I think that got through a lot of them. Are counties okay with this? Are the counties okay with clerks? Are probate judges offering this service? I'm sure they are. It's a public service, and if they are, they can work with them again on the supplement or the 50-50 split. answer the question of whether it was legal, answer the question, let them reach an agreement. Representative Scoggins, we appreciate you sponsoring House Bill 290. As Senator Kirkpatrick noted, it's a little different because there's a third party involved. But in that case, the maximum amount is 50% of the base salary. But in order to reach that, which may seem a little high, the county, the city, and the tax commissioner would have to agree to it. Yeah, so that's a little bit different mechanism, but we appreciate that, fully support your legislation there. Question was asked in previous hearings, why are we just targeting the clerks and probates? We worked some years ago to work on that $7,500 possible cap with the county, if a county enacts a resolution for probates, collecting fees for vital records. We do so with the tax commissioners. There are supplements in state law for each constitutional officer when they bring on extra duties. I did want to point out that this is, I believe, in your packets. If it was emailed this morning, this is how clerks' salaries are calculated. You start with whatever base salary is in law. So I mean, if salary is an issue, sometimes you hear, this is my base salary, this is what I'm getting. Well, just because it's a state statute or minimum base salary, you start adding the supplements to that. So this explains it all, the additional supplements that clerks can gain. And if you flip to the other pages, and not all counties are here, this will show what they're actually making when you start adding those supplements, the state COLAs, state employee pay raises, which also go to them, as well as longevity increases. So if you start with $83,000, it's actually closer to $107,10. Just wanted to explain that to you because salaries are often mentioned. The other sheet are the clerks and probate offices in Georgia, which are offering this public service. We thank them for that. I could go on. In the interest of time, I will not. Again, is the current system right? Are you okay with it? If not, should law be changed? We at ACCG believe so. We fully support this bill. Is it the right balance? Again, there are many mechanisms by which to address that if you don't feel that this bill meets it, or if you don't change the bill. If you can change it, or it can take its course through the mechanisms provided in this bill. Is it fair and equitable? We believe so, and again, if not, that can be changed as well. I've prepared for many questions. We've been a long path, a lot of great questions. I look forward to them, and I'm happy to answer them.
All right, you got a couple on here.
Yes, sir.
Representative Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Edwards, as I kind of said, my concern here is that we're going to place these, we're going to come up with an arbitrary number. I have concerns that our clerks are going to stop, or our probate judges are going to stop offering this service. And there's going to be even if just one clerk, even if just a Fulton County clerk stopped offering this, that would be thousands upon thousands of passports that are now being processed somewhere else, correct?
Is it correct that you have this concern?
Is it correct that if just a Fulton County clerk stopped processing, that there would be thousands of passports that have to be processed somewhere else?
Well, first of all, we would certainly hope that it wouldn't be an abrupt stop just because of Fulton. A clerk couldn't say get over $300,000 a year in personal compensation. I certainly wouldn't hope that wouldn't happen from an elected public official. Should it happen, it is possible. It's a voluntary service. That would be a great shock to the system. Hopefully there would be someone willing to step up in that regard. If not, at that time.
Who would step up? Who else could step up?
Well, it would be a burden on the system. There's no doubt about it. There are post offices. I don't have the list of all the offices within Fulton County, but there are several outside the clerks. Could be post offices, could be libraries. Again, I'm sure folks in the room have it. I don't have it with me.
Mr. Chairman, I don't know what we're gonna do today. I think there certainly needs to be some discussion and maybe more work. But Todd, I want you to think about an amendment that if we end up taking any action today, I may offer, and it would we would create a new Section 3 and renumber thereafter. And I just want your thoughts on this. We would create a new Section 3 that reads, provided, however, that in a county where such services discontinued, the governing body of said county shall provide a means for the performance of passport duties provided for under the laws of the United States or regulations promulgated pursuant to such laws, including but not limited to passport applications or processing fees. that's saying if the counties want to do it and keep the money for themselves, that if it's discontinued in one of the counties that's offering now, that y'all are making the commitment to us that y'all will step up and fill the backlog.
So it would be discontinued with all the other provisions in the bill becoming effective. I mean,
It would you would get to keep 100% of the money. The county would.
I'd have to look at that language, but I'm not certain. And again, I'm not an attorney, and I don't have the federal rules and regulations from the Department of State in front of me. I'm not sure. I really don't know if we're authorized to do it by federal law.
And that's one of my concerns just with taking any action today, Mr. Chairman, is that I don't know how all this plays together federally, and I don't want this to end up being a burden to the system. And that would probably be the amendment that I would probably offer. So I just want to think about that.
Again, I would love to look at that, have our staff look at it, but
So you'd be okay with us not taking any action today so that we can review it and
that's
maybe
up
get
to the will of the committee. I mean, if that were the will to adopt that amendment, I would certainly want to have our folks look at it first.
Thank you.
Okay. Vice Chair Reeves.
Mr. Edwards, you agree Gwinnett County is the second biggest county in the state, right?
Yes.
What is their position on this bill?
I have not heard. I have asked. They have a contract lobbyist. I've asked him to talk with the county commissioner and get back with you directly when you've asked me that question previously.
Okay, so you haven't connected with him on that.
I don't know that there may be differences of opinion on the board. I don't know that they've adopted a resolution or they can speak with one voice like what is Gwinnett County's position. I do not know of that.
We got 21 House members. It's more than 10% of the House, and I think it's important to know the position of Gwinnett County on
I could
this
not
bill.
speak on
And
behalf of Gwinnett in this case.
Understood. From what I understand from the law on who can touch and process passports, it's a court clerk, which in Georgia would be the Superior Court Clerk or the probate court clerk, a library or a post office. And some counties run libraries, others don't. In Gwinnett, the county is fully in charge of the library. That's county general fund, but they don't want to do passports at the library. And then the probate judge, they're maxed out in probate court. We've got the biggest school system in the state. You got 180,000 kids. They're getting birth certificates. You got people getting married at the courthouse with probate and magistrate. Probate court doesn't do passports. So that leaves the post office, and that leaves the Superior Court clerk. And we've got a highly international population in Gwinnett that's traveling. And, the county has said, we want the clerk to do it rather than sending 8,500 people to the post office, which that'd be $300,000 would be 8,500 people. We don't want to send our citizens to the post office. We want the clerk to do it. And so the county's aware of the clerk. Clerk has been forthcoming to the county. And we don't have that Cobb County problem in Gwinnett. And we've got our population being well served by the clerk. And I don't remember this much time and energy being spent in support of Representative Scoggins' bill, House Bill 290, which several people on this committee sponsored, and which we sent over to the Senate. And the worst example of a personal enrichment by a public official in Georgia is a tax commissioner, not a clerk on passports. And he's trying to fix it, and I applaud him for it. But I wish you had spent as much time on that as this. This appears to be kind of a money issue as present. I know it's to solve a problem, but I think it could be done together. They are so similar of an issue. It seems like if there's a little bit of communication and cooperation on this, Representative Scoggins and Senator Kirkpatrick's issues can both be solved in a way that would serve the people efficiently. That's kind of the way I'm seeing this at this point.
If I may respond, Mr. Chairman.
You may.
I respectfully disagree with the ACCG not spending adequate or approximately the same amount of time with the tax commissioner bill. We've been working on this legislation at least the past 2 years actively. Got a bill out of the House with Representative Marvin Lim, went to the Senate, bounced back, got lost on the final day. We brought as part of our legislative agenda, ACCGs this year. We worked with the tax commissioners. We've been working with the cities. We fully support the bill. Hopefully, I believe my colleague, it might have been Dante Handel, would have testified on that. So we have very much made that a priority, a legislative agenda item of ACCG. Have been working hard on that, have for the past couple of years, and it's not that we're singling out any one group. We believe. Yes, sir.
So ACCG does support Representative Scoggins' approach on tax commissioners. What's the difference in the passports and the tax commissioner issue?
Well, there's a few differences. One, that's a three-party contract, and I'm not an expert on the legislation. I know he would be more so. So that would enter the cities, the county, the tax commissioner's office into an agreement. One, on what the county gets for utilizing county, resources, county taxpayer-funded resources. And then second, part of that contract would be what the tax commissioner could collect above and beyond that as personal compensation, but all three parties would be engaged in that contract. So it is a little bit different. Was there a second part to that question? I apologize. So it is a little different. We fully did support it. It's part of ACCG's agenda. We've been working hard. And yeah, it was, do you support the bill? We fully support that bill.
Good deal.
Representative Scoggins.
Okay, picking up on what Representative Evans said earlier about the larger counties and doing it based on population, I just jotted these numbers down. If you're in a county of 50,000 or less, $10,000. If you're in a county of 200,000 or less, 100,000 less is 20. 200,000 or less is 300. 30, excuse me. 300. If you're in a county of 300,000 or less, it's 40,000. If you're in a county above 500,000, it would be a flat 50,000. And cap that as over and done with, the end. Cap those fees on those populations. And I mean, I'm just throwing that out there for the committee and Senator Kirkpatrick to think about. And if we could work that out. And I don't know if that's something like Representative Evans was talking about earlier, but that kind of flipped the switch for me. I thought that was a good idea.
May I ask a friendly question?
Yes.
Just so that calculation, forgive me, I'm not the quickest.
Right.
So that's based on 50% of the base minimum salary? Those what you just came up with? Okay.
That's just a flat out fee I add on to their salary for handling passports for the clerks or the probate judges. If you're in a county of less than 50,000, it's $10,000. Up to 10,000, let me say that. Whichever is greater.
Yeah, I mean, if they don't generate, and
if they don't generate
he's asking if I
10,000, they
may,
get what
I'm
they
not-
generate.
My understanding would be, yeah, if it doesn't reach that
If
amount,
they get
then
seven,
the
if
max. Yeah.
they raise 5,000 selling passports, they only get 5. It's up to, it's capped at 10, 20, 30, 40, and 50,000 for the brackets. I mean, I'm just throwing that out there for food for thought.
If you want to respond.
Whatever the will of the committee, I
Yeah,
think it would.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right. Representative Kelly.
And first, I want to have one question because I think it goes back to my amendment, some clarification. If I can ask Representative Reeves directly, so based on what you said, if my amendment were to pass, the counties do have a mechanism that if they could do this today if they wanted to. If counties wanted to provide this service to their communities, they could do this today and compete with the clerks and the probate judges. Is that your understanding of the law?
Yes, absolutely. And the whole thing about, the notion that a clerk is using county resources, I mean, they're a constitutional official, they have constitutional duties, and you've got these three options, and the county could go set it up at the library, but they want to do library at the library. They don't want to do passports at the library. So they're saying, go get it from one of the two court clerks, and they've talked, and it's the Superior Court clerk who also, by the way, runs tax appeals in Gwinnett. The county sent the tax appeals to the Superior Court clerk. So the county could do it if they wanted to, but I kind of like Representative Scoggins' tax commissioner bill personally. But we've got the clerk here in Gwinnett. I think she signed up to talk, so she can tell you all the landscape, the way they do it there.
So now let me ask a question to Mr. Edwards. Mr. Edwards, do you know of any counties through their library system that are offering competition to the clerks or probate judges?
There are county library systems offering this service. I don't know if it's in competition with a probate or clerk's office, honestly.
And then one an alternate approach to my friend Representative Scoggins and something for us to think about, because my understanding is that clerks in border counties, like my neighbors to the south, Carroll, or our friends up north in Fannin or Towns or Rabun County, they process, my understanding is they process a lot of passports that also come from outside the state of Georgia. So you may have someone from Tennessee come down to Fannin County, or you may have someone from North Carolina or South Carolina come to Rabun or Towns, may have somebody from Alabama come to Carroll. And so I almost wonder if an alternate approach to just doing it based on population, because I don't want these border clerks who may have smaller populations. Now, Carroll's larger, but Towns and Rabun, I think we heard last week, are around 30,000 in population. Is that correct, Mr. Chairman? You're more of a subject matter expert on that than me.
Less than that for both counties, and Towns County is probably around 15 to 18,000.
And they may be processing more passports than they are necessarily popular. So I almost wonder if maybe we ought to work with the clerks in the county to maybe say, let's not necessarily put a tier like that, but maybe find some way to do cost sharing with the counties and the clerks, where the clerks still are incentivized to do these, but not do it on population, because that's what I don't want to happen is up in Fannin County or Rabun County or Towns County, you limit it to $10,000, but they're processing an amount of passports that equal to a county of 200,000 in population, if that makes sense. And so that would be something maybe for us just to maybe bat around as a committee too. Maybe look, if they're getting a $35 fee and we have a conversation about, hey, the county should be getting some of that, and I understand that argument. Maybe though we should say, instead of limiting it this way, maybe we say, I'm a lawyer. I like to think in thirds. So, maybe we say that the clerks get a third of it, and the other 2/3, get split 50-50 between the clerk's office and the county. So that may be something to think about. A third goes to the clerk personally, a third goes to the county, to the general fund, and a third goes to the clerk's office. That may just be a different approach and something for us to think about. And Mr. Chairman, I apologize to everybody here. I've got to go present a bill, and so I hate to step out on this, but I hope we'll have an opportunity to step back just a minute and us.
So you get everything all stirred up and you're going to leave.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I could offer a motion to table before I go if you want me to offer that posture. But I think there's some other people lined up to testify.
I want to get some other people's view on this bill, and then we'll go from there. But thank you.
I may be back in time, Mr. Chairman. I'm certainly, if I get this presentation done, I'm going to be back because I am very interested. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, before we move on, I want to recognize Judges Morris and Levins. We lost Burt Guy, so I want to make sure that we acknowledge that y'all are here, and thank y'all for the service that y'all provide the state and for being here as well. So, all right. Okay, next, speaking of judges, Angela Langard. Please introduce yourself and then give us your testimony.
Thank you very much. My name is Angela Langard, and I am the Associate Probate Court Judge in Fayette County, Georgia. Ann Jackson was scheduled to speak, and she had a family emergency, so she asked that I speak in her stead. So thank you, Mr. Chairman, for hearing from me. This bill is a response to a news article, and it has not been vetted, and no one has come to the council, the Probate Judges Council, and asked, how is this going to affect you? What would be good language for us to use? It's just a knee-jerk reaction to a news article that came out in December or November. This was before the House and the Senate back in 2012. And it got this much attention, and they kicked it down the road because since 1968, for providing the service of processing passports, the clerk or the probate court judge was given $35 per passport that they process. With that comes a lot more than just filing something in as a clerk or putting something in a file. They have to go through certification training. They have to get certified. This is annually. They get audited annually. The person that does the passport, or people in most cases that do the process passports, can't have any connection with birth certificates because they could create a person, and that could create lots of problems. So there's lots of rules that we have to follow to make sure that we comply with the federal government. And then to come in now and say, well, we're just going to cap that, but you keep doing everything you're doing, but we're going to cap what you receive. It just doesn't smell right. As far as we are a county that we give half to the county. But one thing that's not contemplated by this bill is when we take in a passport and we process it, it has to leave our office within 24 hours. And it has to be certified mail, 2-day delivery to the State Department. Then we have to track it and make sure that it gets there within 5 days. This all takes manpower. Well, this bill doesn't talk about who's going to pay the postage, because it's $9.25 per envelope, and you can only put 7 passports in that envelope. So I can't put the 100 that we did that day in that envelope. I can only do 7 at a time. Well, 7 times 9, where does the bill talk about who pays for that? Because right now we do. We pay for it out of the money that we receive from the constituents that come in. And if we're told that we're not, you keep doing what you're doing, but we're going to take your money away that you're getting. That's not really an incentive. And a lot of us would have to stop doing it because our clerks rely on that supplement. Our judge doesn't keep it for herself. She spreads it throughout because we have basically paralegals that do our work. They're not just clerks that take something and file it. I mean, the office of the judge, we have hearings on guardianships and conservatorships. We do will contests. We do lots and lots of things on top of birth certificates, death certificates, weapon carries license, marriage license, passports. There's lots of things that we do. And so it takes a good manpower to get it all done. They have to do their job, plus they rotate in shifts on 2-hour basis of who runs the window, because the passport individuals can't come in to our office. They have to be at a little window because they can't be in where the vital records are. And we can't mix all these people together. So now we have a window for certain things and a window for certain things, and they have to be outside, and only the people that are doing probate business come in. But I just think that this really should be tabled, as Representative Kelly said, and there needs to be some research, because as it is presented, one of the major concerns that I have, and this is on page 4, line item 92, this says that 50% will be paid to the county authority general fund, I apologize. And then the next page, it says 50% shall be paid to the judge. Well, that is a huge concern, because if our county construes this to say it's paid to the judge, then the judge is going to have to pay taxes on that. And then how is she going to be able to share it with the clerks that are actually performing the duties? So we have concerns about the language. And another thing is this says, okay, probate court, bring in all this money and then give it all to the county, and then we'll give you back 50%. Well, we bring it in. Shouldn't we just retain it and give the county the half? I mean, that's how we currently do it. We keep up with we give them how much money we brought in for the month. We subtract the mailing fees, which are sometimes $12,000. I'm sorry, $1,200. I mean,
Who performs your audit? Is it the county?
No, it's the Department of State.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
And so we take in the money, we keep it in a separate account, passport money, and out of that we pay the mailing, which is very expensive, and then we pay 50% of what's left to the county. And we tell them, this is how many we processed, this is how much money we took in, this is how much we paid for mailing, and so this is what's left, your half is this. And we give that to them. But the way this is written is we take it in, we give it all to the county, and then they give us back whatever the percentage or the amount, the 10, the 20, the whatever. Then the rest is split 50-50, but it's divided by the county. And it just seems the way, I mean, we're bringing it in. Why do we give it all away and then them give it back?
Okay, I understand. If, could y'all make it work if y'all paid for the employees that handled all the passports that came in? Would it be feasible for you to do that?
If their salary from
In
the
other
county?
words, looking at it as like a business.
Yes.
If you hire the employees to handle the passports, the applications for the passports, is it feasible for you under the current system to be able to pay them and do the business that you contract with the state, with the federal government?
Yes, that is what we're doing.
Right.
Yes.
Are you able to do that if you were to hire your own people? The concern I have, what I'm seeing is that and I know it varies, this isn't for everybody, but in some of these counties, they're probably using county-paid employees to bring in all this money on these passport applications. And if they were having to hire their own people, could they afford to do that? That's my question.
Well, I would say in general for the state, no. But for the big three, perhaps. I can't speak for them. We could do that. I mean, if that salary was just taken out of the passport money, yes, we generate enough to pay an employee, but our employees aren't strictly they don't strictly do passports. They do other probate court responsibilities.
Right.
So they have to do their job plus that. So we break them up.
But not every county has an agreement with the clerk or whoever's taking in the applications to provide that money or to divide it up in a way that helps pay the counties for what they're supplying to this and then pay y'all for the work that you're doing. You understand where I'm coming from?
I do. Our county doesn't do that, so I'll let them speak for themselves on that issue, because I know some of the clerks are here and they can tell you more exactly. But one thing I just wanted, I know that Representative Kelly's gone, but I asked one of my 3 clerks to keep track of in the month of February in anticipation of this, how many people were sent by the post office to our court. And this is post office around our little Fayette County. And it was 171 that just came out and told her. We went to the post office. We waited 30 days to get an appointment. We got there and they told us all appointments are canceled because we don't have the staff to do post office work today. So you're just canceled. Get back online. And they sent them to us. We got a call from Atlanta post office where they said, we've got a bunch of people here. Can we send some your way? And we are happy to do it. But if we're not doing it, the post office, they can't. They just don't have the staff, unfortunately. And we get constituents all the way down to Columbus because we're one of the few on the south side that process. And we definitely get them from McDonough, Clayton, a lot of from Clayton. And it is a service, and the people are grateful that we are there to process. And I don't think that based on a news article that came out less than 3 months ago, we need to topturby everything over without any research or talking with the clerks. You know, how is it going to affect them? What would then happen? Or talking with the judges. I think it should be tabled, or if it's going to have to go through like it is, I think it's going to cause a lot of problems with constituents.
All right, got one question. Vice Chair Reeves.
So in your county, the probate court does a lot of passport applications.
Yes, sir.
Does the Superior Court clerk also do?
No, sir.
Why not? Just by agreement or by, at the courthouse, probate court has stepped up and does it, and the Superior Court clerk does not in your county. That's kind of the landscape.
Yes, sir.
Your libraries, does the county run the libraries in your county?
The county does.
And do they offer passport processing at the county libraries?
No, sir, they do not.
Okay, thanks.
All right. Representative Holcomb.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate what you had to say, and I'm trying to figure this out, and I think all of us are. I don't think that there's any disagreement in terms of the service is needed. The service helps with the operational flow that the federal government has difficulty keeping up with. But I think what we're wrestling with and trying to have greater clarity of understanding is in terms of the personal remuneration which is taking place and whether or not that's appropriate and fair. So with respect to that, can you share with us, in terms of your duties as a probate judge and the other employees within your office, can you quantify in some type of way, weekly, monthly, however you want, how much time is being devoted to this as passports? Because what I'm trying to figure out is this truly something extra for which extra compensation should be paid, or is it just something that you're doing as a matter of course? And if it is something that is a matter of course, it seems my perspective here, I'm not saying this is the perspective of anybody else on the committee, but I would have an issue if all those monies are just going to a single person, if there's lots of other people within those offices that are doing that work. So that's the way that I'm looking at it, if you'd like to respond and share.
Well, I can answer for our court. We have essentially one full-time person doing passports all day because they are done online. You make an appointment. We take walk-ins in addition to appointments, but we prioritize appointments for families that can't wait, that don't have a lot of time. So we have it on our website, and we take appointments every 15 minutes. If someone doesn't show up for an appointment, we slide in a walk-in. There is always a line. So when I say we break it up between our clerks because they have other duties to do, they each sit at the window for, I think it's 2.5 hours a day, so that they do that for 2.5 hours, they go back, do their work, another one rolls in. So for us, we could have 2 windows full-time. We have to turn people away at the end of the day. But for us, yes, we could have a designated passport person, and we could have 2 designated passport people.
And then for the judges, how much time out of your days is spent reviewing this, or is it all on the clerks and the staff?
It's all on the clerks and the staff.
Okay. And then who gets paid? Is it the judges or is it the clerks?
Well, from what we do, 50% goes to the county, the 50% stays in the account, and then quarterly it is given to the clerks as supplemental compensation.
Okay. Okay. Thanks.
Okay.
And to answer, just to give you a ballpark, because we are considerably smaller, in February we processed 1,186 passports. In January, we did 1,067 passports. So we just kind of looked back. So you can see that in February, that was a good month for us because it's cyclical. It's based on when the children are going to be out for break. So everybody needs a passport for spring break. So they come to us on their February break to get their passport and things like that. So that was a big month for us. We brought in $41,510. And like I said, in February, we paid $1,657 in postage.
And can I ask one more question, Mr. Chair? The $35, is that consistent across the state too?
Federal
so
law.
That's what everybody is being charged, and then whatever the fees are for the processing to the Department of State, if you want it expedited or routine, those are separate fees.
They are separate, and we have to pay for those. And they have to be in separate envelopes. If you want to do expedited, there can only be 7 in this envelope, and then non-expedited 7 in this one. So when we're doing 1,186, you can see how that the mailings add up. And this law, as drafted, doesn't contemplate that.
And the postage comes out of the $35 that you're earning. So whatever revenues you have to take that out of in terms of the math equation, correct?
We do.
Okay.
We pay the postage first, then we split half with the county.
Okay. Got it. Thanks.
Vice Chair Reeves?
I think I heard you say it, but I want to make sure I was clear. Did you mention that people are coming from other counties to your county to do it because either some counties just don't do it or you're doing it better?
Yes, sir.
And what county? Remind me.
Henry?
Okay.
we're-
No. What county are you?
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm Fayette.
Fayette.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Well, good job on this. Thanks for sharing the information.
Thank you.
All right, and Representative Scoggins.
I stepped out just a minute. What was your population of Fayette County?
191,000.
191. Okay, that's all I had.
All right, thanks. All right, let's see. Ms. Gardner? Or Garner? Is it Garner?
Yes,
Yeah,
Garner.
sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
All right, tell us who you are and then what you want us to know.
Sure. Good afternoon. My name is Tiana Garner, and I'm the Clerk of Superior Court in Gwinnett County. I'm asking you all to vote against Senate Bill 19. And the reason I'm asking, I have several reasons, but we'll start with the one that they like to push the most. And they're saying disclosure. Disclosure, disclosure, disclosure. We are constitutional officers. Too much money runs through our offices for us not to disclose anything. As a constitutional officer, I am not subject to the county's audits. But as good business sense, I do subject myself to those audits. And I will, and I have, and both of my predecessors did as well. I'm subject to an internal audit, an external audit. I am also subject to an audit from Homeland Security. Not only that, my county finance department, they sent me an email today because they're going over 2022 numbers, asked for the passport audits. We turn that stuff over immediately. Secondly, the numbers that Senator Kirkpatrick read to you, I'm not sure where she got those from, but they came from me. I responded to an open records request within 3 days, and it was printed in the paper. What she failed to tell this committee, it was also printed in the paper. I share a portion of it with the counties. And again, this bill has not been properly researched. I think there are only 1 or 2 counties that keep the money and don't split with the counties. I do split. She didn't share that number, so I'll go ahead and share that. And that was upwards of $70,000 that I shared with the county. And most of my fellow clerks do. So we don't need a law to legislate us. We were independently elected, and the law allows for us to run our offices independently, even down to our budget. Every penny that the county commissioners put in my budget, the law says and contemplates for each Superior Court clerk to run their offices and spend their budgets just as they see fit. And I believe the law contemplates that because no 2 counties are alike. What this law seeks to do is usurp our authority as constitutional officers, and it tries to make everybody fit in one box. And as you've heard today, that just simply doesn't work, and that's not the solution. And then there's also an argument about, you know, the Superior Court clerks don't do the work themselves. I manage 4 courts: Superior, State, Magistrate, and Juvenile. And I have a county over 1 million people. There's no way that me as one person can do all of that work myself. And several of us, as Representative Scoggins mentioned, receive county supplements for that. County supplements that are personal income for additional responsibilities and additional duties that we take on. And then Senator Kirkpatrick also said something that really kind of stuck with me. Her argument to this committee was she doesn't know what the right number is. Lucky for her, she didn't have to figure it out. Federal government has set what the right number is, because at this point, we're acting on behalf of the federal government. We're not acting on behalf of the county. The feds, not the county, authorize the amount, and it's set in federal statute. And if you take a look at the federal statute, it says that the passport acceptance agents shall. Now, I know many people have sat up here and said they're not attorneys. I'm an attorney, and I practiced law for nearly 10 years before I became clerk. When it says shall, that means it's not optional. It's not negotiable. You have no discretion. The federal statute says you shall charge a $35 execution fee. Doesn't matter if you go to a library, doesn't matter if you go to a post office, doesn't matter if you come to the clerk's office. Charging that $35 is not optional. And again, myself and the majority of other clerks split that with the county. Even though the federal statute doesn't say that second part. It doesn't mandate us to split with the counties, but we do because we're good stewards and we were constitutionally elected and we've made good decisions and we've run our offices effective and efficiently. And then I think it was a representative over here had asked for a number that the big three processed. I am one of the big three: Gwinnett, DeKalb, and Fulton. Between just us three counties, we have processed over 30,000 applications in 1 year alone. So that's not processed, I'm sorry, accepted. We don't process them, we accept them. That's 30,000. And I will tell you, in Gwinnett County, both libraries and post offices accept passports. Our library and our post office turn people away and send them to the clerk's office. They have sent, and they made up their own flyers. They didn't ask us, they didn't call us, they didn't get our input. They made up their own flyers, and they send people to our office, and we don't turn them away. If you've got a child, I've heard, if you've got a child and you go to a post office or library in Gwinnett, they send you to the clerk's office. We take them. Our libraries and post office are inundated. They cannot handle the volume. They've got appointments 8 weeks out. I've heard people say, oh, you know, we've got to the library, we've stayed in line 2 hours, and then we got turned away. Our office stops accepting passports at 4, but if you're in line, I've kept our office open as late as 6 or 7 o'clock to make sure that everybody that comes in there gets a service, because I take my job and my responsibility seriously. And it's not just the clerks that process it. I am there too, in the trenches, late, just like my other colleagues who are clerks. We really do this because this is a service that is offered that we care about. And this is a service that our constituents in our county wants. I was asked to bring passports. I was deputy clerk before I became the elected clerk. And I got asked all the time, bring this to Gwinnett, bring this to Gwinnett. Why don't we do this in Gwinnett? We're the biggest county in the Southeast. We brought it to Gwinnett, and the numbers speak for themselves. I haven't been processing passports a year, and we've helped nearly 7,000 residents. And that's just what we track, because we don't track renewals, because the federal government doesn't allow us to accept applications for renewals. But you know what? If you come to my office, you're still going to get top-tier service. We're going to take your photo. That money we turn over to the county. We're going to help you with your application, and we're going to look it over and give you an envelope to mail it, because we care about service. So this bill is not properly vetted. They didn't get input from the people that it will affect the most, clerks and clearly probate judges. Again, it's a knee-jerk reaction to something that happened in one county. And so now they want to shove everybody in this box. And this is just not a one-size-fit-all solution. Any questions?
Ms. Garner, you covered the fact that you're a lawyer and you have multiple courts that you're the clerk of. In Cobb County, they've got great courts, but I have to cross the street to go to the different clerks. You do them all in Gwinnett in one
That's
building,
correct.
right? And today was India Day here at the Capitol. We had a ton of Indian folks from our area in Gwinnett. And Gwinnett's got a high Indian population.
Correct.
Right? Korean population.
Correct.
Right. Latin American
Correct.
population, Mexico, and all the countries in Central and South America. Correct.
Spanish. We offer Spanish services. We have several agents who are passport certified that speak Spanish.
And when school's out or holidays happen, you sort of get barraged with people coming to do
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, our highest number, we've accepted applications upwards of 120 in one day. Just one day.
And your way of, and when you mention people who are adversely affected, it might be the government or the clerks. To me, the people who would be adversely affected are those Indian folks, Korean folks, and people who want to go to Mexico and people who want to visit overseas. That's the real person who would get disrupted if they have to go to the post office. But my question is, everything you've done, which has been effective and works in Gwinnett, it hasn't affected the delivery of services of the courts, and the probate judge is okay with it as well as the county, right?
Correct. Our county commissioners actually posted on our county Facebook social media that our county offers this service. They were excited about it. I received calls from commissioners thanking me, emails, texts saying thank you for bringing the service to Gwinnett. We are the most diverse county in the Southeast. So yes, they're excited about this service, and it shows in the numbers. Our line is packed all day, every day. And it's a service we're happy to provide.
Any other, Representative Holcomb?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Clerk Garner. I appreciate that, but I'm going to ask you similar questions to what I asked the probate judge. I don't think anybody disagrees with providing the service. I think people recognize that that's valuable. The question is just in terms of the compensation, and usually in public service, there isn't private compensation of this nature. There's usually just a fixed salary and then a job that's to be done. So can you share with the committee what your compensation is through this process and how much of your day is spent, or week, whatever metric you want to use, in terms of working on this?
In terms of the raw numbers?
Yes.
So the number that Senator Kirkpatrick put up that we gave to when we responded to open records requests was $96,000, but that doesn't account for the nearly $80,000 that we turned over to the county. That I didn't keep any of that as personal compensation.
Okay.
And what part of my day is spent on passports? Anytime I walk out there and there's a line, I stop what I'm doing. Unless I have a meeting or I'm down here, I stop what I'm doing and I help constituents. But it's not just for passports. If somebody needs help with Superior Court filings, I stop and I help them. If they need help with a magistrate filing, I have walked people to court because they can't find their way around the building. It's just, I don't look at anything as that's not my job. That's just who I am. So if I see a line at any of my windows, I'm not any better than anybody that works that window. I started out cleaning up conference rooms. I was a paralegal. I made copies. And then I went to law school and became a lawyer, and now I'm clerk. None of that matters. What matters is somebody's in line and needs some help. They don't care about my credentials. What they care about is, I want to spend an hour in this line and you're just walking by looking at us. I don't do that in my office.
Right. And I appreciate that. So with respect to the personal compensation, to make sure that I understand it, is your part like 16,000 from the 96 and then the rest goes to the committee? We're trying to have an understanding of how this is allocated.
No, 96 was my part, and then the rest of it went to the county. The rest of it was turned over to the county's general fund.
And how much was that?
Nearly $80,000.
Okay. And is the money shared in any way with the workers in your office?
There's things that we do for our staff, such as provide lunch. We do other things, parties, office morale building, staff appreciation gifts. There's a lot of things that we do for the staff in terms of what is shared with them.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Is that,
all right. I don't
Mr.
see any more
Chairman?
questions. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Deborah DeBerry. If you would tell us who you are and then what you want to say to us.
Sure. I'm Deborah DeBerry, and I'm the clerk of Superior Court in DeKalb County. And I run a $50 million a year enterprise, generated $48 million in revenue that did go to my county. Our focus, as Tiana and the probate judge mentioned, is on service. And the big three, we were targeted in the media, and we did process approximately 30,000 passports last year. The need has only gotten greater since the media attention, and about 30% of my day is in phone calls around passports right now and doing special passports, trying to arrange congressional walkthroughs out of the State Department in Washington, D.C. The Atlanta passport office in downtown Atlanta is now at 10 to 12 week wait just for an appointment. Our post offices are how they got stacks of my business cards, I'm not sure, but they passed those out. And it's not just the downtown Decatur post office. There are post offices in Stone Mountain. Somebody's passing them around. But we're getting inundated with with passports. So the need is definitely great. There, again, I also wanted to address one of the driving factors in the media attack against the big three was on disclosure and transparency. And as Tiana mentioned, we're audited. I have 3 audits a year, one by Homeland Security, which is a tough audit. And that is every year. I have 2 financial audits by the county, and as a constitutional officer, I'm not obligated to subject myself to that, but for the fact of full transparency, I welcome those financial audits, one internal and one external. So the transparency and the disclosure is most definitely there. On the $35 fee, I'll get to that because I think I was going to address your question, but I guess I'll just wait for questions. In Senate Bill 19, and I think some have mentioned it, about a cap. In clerk world, we don't typically do caps because we're thinking about the entire state of the body of clerks. For example, with our retirement, if it were not for the metro counties, clerks that are south of Macon would not have a decent retirement. The metro pays for the retirement at the same rate, no matter if it's from Webster County to Fulton County. So, and that's because we don't use caps. We also support the Georgia Superior Court Clerks Cooperative Authority, who supports smaller counties that have smaller populations and smaller budgets through technology, equipment, training, and such. Clerks, so I didn't realize you were working on a tax commissioner bill, but I wanted to say that we were targeted again in Senate Bill 19 because we're one of 4 constitutional officers, and so that may change. But Governor Kemp states that Georgia is a business-friendly state. Passports are necessary for that. The late Speaker Ralston recognized the importance of clerks processing passports, and whenever this came up in the past, he shot it down because he recognized this, and I hope that you do as well. I'll take questions.
Representative Holcomb.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Clerk DeBerry, welcome. Good to see you. And I'd like to ask the same question. And we are trying to do some fact finding to have an understanding. And at least what I would like to know is if you can provide the similar breakdown in terms of your work for this, the compensation, how it's distributed and allocated, et cetera.
So the first of all, the federal it was $25, and in 2018, the federal government raised it to $35 to further incentivize clerks to continue and more to actually do passports because the need was there. So for me, I do a split with the county, and it may not be monthly. It may sometimes I take a year, but they also make it's usually $10, but it will cover the salary and then the additional fee that they get, because I do photos, so they get the photo fee as well.
Okay.
100%.
Okay. So what are the raw numbers, if you could share those with us?
209,000 and because I sent mine in an open records request also. And what I sent to the county was $68,000.
Okay. So your personal...
And that's not including the photo fee.
Okay. So your personal comp was over 200?
Correct.
Okay. And is that, how long have you been doing this?
since 2014.
Okay. Has that been fairly consistent in terms of compensation levels over those years?
Probably, I have to go back and look. We're doing so much more right now. We didn't do any in 2020, part of 2021. So now the numbers are just incredible. And I've never turned away a person, but we're almost getting to that point of turning them away. The Atlanta office also sends them to us. They're asking us to now work Saturdays. I'm being asked to, and I do weekends where we take passports to your organizations. I did the 100 Black Men of DeKalb's Youth Academy last Saturday. They have asked that I go to the GBI and do all their people. And it's unfortunate that the federal government underfunded that part of the State Department.
Right. Recognizing that for most people, working hours are not 9 to 5.
Correct.
And I'm assuming that that's true for you too. How much of the work that you devote to the passports would be outside of your typical working hours for your other duties as clerk?
I don't know. Because I don't separate passports from any other work, and I figure I work 24/7. I work on the weekends. If you call me on Sunday and you have an issue, you'll get me.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay. Vice Chair Reeves?
Clerk DeBerry, the probate court in DeKalb, did they do passports?
No.
Okay.
They do marriages, vital records, and carry license.
Okay. And also conservatorships, guardianships, all the court proceedings, and they did it by Zoom during COVID and were fully operational. They did a great job on that, but they were doing court, and that's what they do, and they leave it to you to do the passports. What about DeKalb County? Do they do passports at the libraries or any other county office?
I don't believe the library does. No, I would. Well, I can't speak for all of them. I think the one on Sycamore downtown Decatur, no, they don't.
And you've been fully forthcoming with the county about the money
Correct.
that you've handled.
And the way the federal law is written, we can only treat that $35 as personal income with taxes to be paid. For example, among the big three, our state income tax was about a little over $100,000 that went to the state through state revenue that they would not have gotten had the money gone to the tax-exempt county. And so how you spend the money, if, for example, someone mentioned if you did something in your office, and we all do lots of things. We pay for funerals. But those aren't things that you talk about because you don't brag about things like that. But those are funds. Anything that we keep, we have to pay tax on. So having in a bill that says you must spend your personal income that you're paying state and federal taxes on for office supplies just doesn't wash.
Representative Scoggins.
I got one question. If you turned your money into the county and the county included that in your base salary that you're getting, would that not help your retirement?
It would help. I still have to pay tax on it if it was in my salary, in my income, but yes, that would help.
Okay.
And, I wanted to contribute the money specific, some of it anyway, early on was to fund a particular, it was a new vest for police, for example. I had to get a legal opinion could I just designate that without having to pay tax on it. And the legal opinion was no, you cannot. So I had to make a contribution to the police alliance that went to the police for uniforms. Just as an example, because if it goes straight to the county, it goes into the general fund. They're not going to carve it out and say, okay, this is earmarked for police or for whomever. And I also handle Board of Equalization, 13 3-member boards that I don't get a supplement for.
So just so I'm clear, you're not incorporated or anything like that?
No.
This is all through the office itself?
Correct.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you. I don't see any other questions, so thank you very much. All right. Dana Chastain. With Mr. Chastain, we'll get a little smaller county perspective here. So
yes, from rural counties. Just to touch on a few points that I had heard some questions that were going around. The statistics, there were 78 clerks. There's 75 post offices, and there's only 10 libraries in the state. There's 8 probate courts, and there's 4 others, which are UGA, City of Sugar Hill, and the Atlanta Mega Center, which is no longer taking passports. And then there was an establishment in the City of Sugar Hill. I think maybe, I'm not sure. Where's Sugar Hill?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Senator Ginn used to be the city manager there, so
Okay.
I'll find out what the story is.
Okay. So, and then, as some have said, we are transparent, and I think every clerk is, and probates that do those. We undergo county audits and the Homeland Security audit. Something I wanted to touch on with that is we have to have the yearly training to be certified. That test is a 6 to 8 hour test. You have to make 90 or above. If you don't, you cannot issue or be a passport agent. There's only, I have the federal law, I'll be glad to pass that out, but only 6 people are entrusted by the federal government, and 4 of those are the federal, you have to work for a federal agency. And so 2 of us, the clerks and the probate judges, are allowed to process passports. I'll just speak for myself because I'm a smaller county as to the $35 that we pay the personal taxes on, the federal and state, and postage once that's paid, and supplies. So out of that, an average of $5 to $10 is what I would be keeping. There was supplements mentioned that every 159 clerks, those supplements for the different courts that we serve. And with this not being a mandated function, supplement really doesn't fit the circumstance. And most clerks in the smaller counties don't even make $1,000. I'll touch on what I did for the year. Was a particular year last year was around a little over 400 passports in a year, which that averages out to about 30. And some things that I do is I go to the schools, or I'll stay on Saturday, and I do those personally myself. And when schools do school trips, or churches, they decide to do a trip abroad, so I'll come in on Saturdays, or I have went to the First Baptists. They're usually the largest, and I'll set up there and process those there. I'm sure others do the same, because we do talk about this, and we all contribute back to our communities in different ways. Something that I do want to also touch on is we are the first line of defense for fraud, because in our training we have to be able to verify original birth certificates or naturalizations that come from abroad, and there's a process in doing that. We're the first line of defense for fraud or abduction or trafficking. And I'll mention an instance that happened in my county. We had a private school come from out west, Utah or somewhere, and they came to Fannin. They set up, and we have an observation list that we have to go by depending on how children act, or if they won't let us ask questions. And we like to interact with these folks just to make sure they know what they're doing. And these instructors would not allow me to interact with the students. They wouldn't let them answer questions. And bottom line was, they were taking them out of the country, keeping them for long periods of time, and then bringing them back. So there were indictments taken on those folks. So we do play an important part. This is not a mandated function for clerks. We do this because we are people, and we have a passion for serving our community, our citizens, and just humanity. With that being said, I'll entertain any questions.
Oh, okay. Representative Scoggins.
Hey.
Speaker Ralston always said he had a great clerk up in his county, and it sounds like he does.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
He spoke highly of you, and
I
appreciate
thought
you
very
coming
highly of
down.
him.
Appreciate you coming down, and you don't claim any kin to Representative Johnny Chastain on the back row back there, do you?
Well, we may be branch kin. I'm not sure.
Thank you for coming today. Thank you for your input.
Thank you.
All right. Representative Holcomb.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You helped explain a little bit more about the extra duties that go along with this work, and that it's sometimes on weekends, et cetera. Tell me a little bit more about this test of 6 to 8 hours. It takes only 3 hours to become a foreign service officer, so that's wild to me that it takes 6 to 8 hours to process passports.
I was speaking for myself, and I may be a little slower, but you do have to go this test. It's online, and you have to go through a number of modules. There's like 20 to 30 different interactions that you're given scenarios to go through. You can't just jump to the test. You have to actually go through these modules, and they grade you on those modules, and it's quite time consuming.
Is that annual or just?
Annual.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And the test, like I said, you have to make 90 or above. So if I'm not focused, I have taken it as many times as 3.
Okay.
But that goes for every employee that we allow to do it. And so when I am away from the office, or I'm gone to a conference, I do have 2 employees that help me out only during that time.
Okay. And based on the numbers that you presented, your personal comp is like $1,000, right? If you're only doing.
Well, the $35, I pay taxes on the whole $35, regardless of what I pay that for. And are you asking what do I give
Yes.
back to my office?
No. What do you receive in private compensation for your role in this
Okay.
extra duty
on
an annual basis?
Okay, the year that I did up to a little over 400 was approximately $14,000, in between 14 and 15.
Okay. And is that fairly consistent over time?
It has been, except during COVID, and it dropped as low as, I think it was about $5,000 or $6,000 during COVID. There was not a lot of travel.
Okay. And how do you allocate the $35 again?
Okay, the $35 with me personally, federal taxes is about, and I contacted my CPA on this. It was about 20% in federal, about 15% in state. Then the postage is approximately $10. It's $9.65, and then supplies. I also pay for my travel. I don't turn travel expenses into the county when I'm coming back and forth to Atlanta, those types of things. I give to, I buy lunches for my staff when we can't take lunch. There's a number of other different things that I contribute back.
And do you aggregate multiple passports into a single envelope to save, like we heard earlier, or do you send them all on an individual one, so it's $9.65 for a single, or we heard that you could put up to 7 into an envelope for the same price?
It just depends. Only having 30 on the average, 30 per month, it may be that I do one a day, so I've got to spend that $9.65. But if I had a really busy week, and let's say that I did 10, 2 or 3 of those may get put into the same envelope.
Okay. And do you get a 1099? I should have asked this probably earlier. Do you get a 1099, or what type of?
No, we keep up with those through transmittals, and I turn that number over to my CPA as to how much that I have made.
Okay. Help me understand. Are you writing a check to yourself from the clerk's checking account?
It all goes into a specific bank account just for that.
Just for this.
Mm-hmm.
And whose name is that in?
In mine. It's in, yes, Dana Chastain, PPA, passport agent.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
I think that's all the questions. Thank you.
Thank
that
you.
was our last witness. All right. Senator Kirkpatrick, I'll give you have the burden, so I'll give you a response.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'm sorry that this bill has kept y'all here so long. But this bill was introduced January 25th. It's been out there on the website. I have not heard from any probate judges about this. I did hear from a few court clerks, and I did meet with Ms. Chastain, and I just have to say that if everybody did business like her, we wouldn't even be here today. And the reason that we ended up putting the section in that allows for some to be taken as personal income is because of the testimony or the conversation that I had with Ms. Chastain and a few other clerks from smaller counties. The thing that I really was trying to achieve with this is the disclosure part, number one, because that is not happening in all the counties. There are 50 counties that allow personal income to be taken. I don't really know which counties are disclosing that to the counties or which are giving money back to the counties. That is not information that I've been able to get. The county employees, it sounds like some of that money might be going to buy lunches and things like that for county employees, but I don't think any of it's going back to their salary. I'm not really sure. Again, that information is not readily available. And in addition to the transparency piece, I just have a problem with the amounts of money that we're talking about going to somebody's personal income over and above their salary. And I know that in at least 2 of the counties that we've been talking about, the county did not know that that was going on. And I just think that's wrong. So there's a lot of flexibility in this bill, and the formula, we can argue about whether the formula is right or wrong. The formula can be changed as in every part of it. The split between the county and the clerk or the probate judge's office and the amount of the cap, that can all be changed, either with a local bill or with a written agreement. So with that, I don't think I have anything else to add. I'm not trying to get into anybody's personal business, but it just seems that we need more sunlight on this area and some ability for the counties to know what's going on, because I know that at least 2 of the counties, as I mentioned, they really did not know that this was going on, and particularly for the amounts of money that we're talking about. So with that, I'll leave it up to the will of the committee.
All right. Senator Kirkpatrick, in light of the testimony we've had and the questions that have been raised by the committee, I'm going to make this a hearing only at this time and give everybody a chance to maybe come back and discuss what changes could be made that might be acceptable to all the folks that have talked here today. And we have, I don't have anything scheduled for the rest of the week, but I do have a standing committee time on Thursday afternoon right now. If we need to come back at that time, we can. I have 4 bills set up. Right now it's 4. It might drop to 3. We haven't had that discussion yet. For next Tuesday, same time. And then we have that Thursday after that, which we could possibly pick all this back up again. So just to let you know.
Thank you very much.
All right. Thank
Thanks
you.
to the committee for your patience.
Representative Holcomb.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, thank you. I appreciate you letting us have this discussion. And while sitting here, I did just a little bit of research that might be helpful to the members of the committee too. The Department of State has on its website, it requests that this work be done of having passport acceptance facilities. And I think all of us agree on the need, and that has to be a public entity. This cannot be privatized. So what they're doing is providing a very valuable service, and I don't believe there's any disagreement over that. The question is just, what should the compensation levels be, and should we get involved in helping to make that, or should we just let it continue as it's going? And so I appreciate you making this a hearing only, because I think it's a very interesting issue, and I want to thank the Senator for bringing it forward too.
Sure.
Thanks.
All right. Thank you. We're adjourned.